Hi, I'm Dave Fletcher, owner of Fletchtronics.net. Okay, so here we are on the cooking stage of building Bumble-Bs. Although I assemble 10 Bumble-Bs worth of parts at a time, I actually only cook 5 at a time. And the reason I do this is just because it's just a little harder to manage 10 boards on a hot plate at once and just make sure that everything's going well. So, without further ado, we're going to start cooking. So the way I do this is I simulate a temperature curve by slowly, and it's hard to see with all the light here, make sure the hot plate's on, yep. I slowly ramp up the temperature here over a couple of minutes, and alternately shift the Bumble-Bs around a little bit on the hot plate. And the reason I do that is because there's a very uneven heating element under this thing. It's a very inexpensive hot plate, so therefore the temperature controller is not the best temperature controller in the world, and neither is the heating element. So we make up for these things by very slowly turning up the temperature a little bit at a time and just shifting them around a little bit. Also, since we've got them on tin foil here, that's raised up a little bit from the actual heating element, so I just like to give them a little push, a little tap while they're cooking. And so we're just going to repeat this a few times. Okay. Turn up the temperature. Shift them around a little bit. Now the point at which the solder is going to melt on this hot plate is right at the low setting, which I've just figured out through experimentation. I figure I'm pretty much within the temperature curve of the components on the Bumble-B, just because I figured out the lowest possible temperature that I can melt the solder at, so therefore it's hopefully the temperature curve fits within the temperature curve of the components and we don't fry anything. Some people have mentioned to me that these hot plates can have very high spikes of temperature, so it's a good idea to just keep it moving almost like you're cooking something and just make sure each one's getting pretty evenly heated. Okay, now we're just about at low here. So low on here is where the solder is going to go over, so now we pretty much just have to wait a little bit. Just keep these things moving, and I'm keeping an eye on all the components on here to make sure that they're not shifting around or falling off, and in an emergency I can use my pointer tool to fix it. Let's see, how are we doing? It's low. Just a couple more minutes here. Once it does start to go over, the main thing that we're looking for is the paste to turn silver on the biggest pads. So on the Bumble-B, that's on the USB header. It's got quite a bit more surface area on each of the 4 feet than the rest of the components do. So there's a lot more solder paste on there. So that's going to take a little more time than everything else. So that's the primary thing that we're going to watch here. And once all the feet have gone over, then we're pretty positive that the rest of the solder has been melted. Most of it we can just tell just by looking, but like the crystal oscillator, the pads are actually underneath the component, so we're not entirely 100% sure it's melted just by glancing. So by knowing which are the biggest components, we can just have a guess. And let's see, should be getting pretty close here. Turn up a little more. Okay. Well, at this point, probably not seeing this on the film, the there's some steam rising out of here. This isn't smoke at this point, it's steam. The moisture, and there go the cats. The moisture inside the solder paste is melting, boiling, and what we're seeing is the steam from that. And actually you have to be kind of careful. If you have very, very small parts, they can actually flip over from too much heat too fast. So the paste can actually boil a little bit. So you want to be careful there, and just cook it nice and slow. Starting to get a lot of steam now. Shift things around a little bit. And you want to be really careful when you're shifting these things around, because the last thing you want is hot components flying around your room. Trust me on that. Okay. Okay. Getting closer here. Some of it's starting to go silver. And we probably have just about a minute left or so. So now I'm just watching the feet of the USB connection, and also just glancing at all the other components to make sure nothing looks all crazy. Getting pretty close. The little USB headers a tap. Help them go over. Shift them around a little more. Turn. Now, this way of doing it is a little bit of a cowboy way of cooking a circuit board. You might actually want to consider looking at a temperature controller, which would give you a better idea of actually how hot this is right now, and make sure you're not burning anything. There's a kit available at SparkFun which looks very interesting that you can get for $100. Okay, so we're just about done here. I can see 4 or so of them. The feet have gone over. This one still needs a little more time. Let's turn it a little bit. Oh, this one too. Oh, that one just went. And this one's close. And there it goes. And we're all set. Now I'm just going to lick my fingers a little bit, and we're going to get this off of here. And turn it off. Now, like I said, I cook 5 of these at a time, and so what I do is, in order to cool this whole thing off, and I'm going to want to reuse this hot plate again, and start again at room temperature, because I noticed that the controller on here is a little messed up. So, like I said, it's a cheap hot plate. So if you start at room temperature, you seem to get a better temperature curve than if you start with the thing hot. Alright, so now, while these should be just about cool enough now to move, so we'll just get them off this tin foil. Right. And get the tin foil out of the way. Alright, so at this point, while I'm waiting for this thing to cool down, what I'll do is I'll solder on the 3-pin header. So I heat up my iron at this point and solder on the 3-pin power header on a Bumble-B. Just a couple, 3 little quick ones on the back there. And then that's it. And then we have a complete Bumble-B. And so we're all set. And so thanks everybody for watching, and we've got 100 Bumble-Bs. Actually, when I cook these next 5, we're all done. Cheers.